Hi there. Welcome back to the knee. We are going to go through a series of ranges the knee can move in today. Now, I am going to try, I know most of our audience out there is not really clinicians. Some are clinicians in making. So I'm going to try and make this as painless as possible and as easy as possible. Okay, a few weeks ago, we went over the musculature of the knee, all right, and we briefly touched on the movements, on what the muscles do. Today, we'll touch a little bit back on the muscles, but we're going to talk more about the movements of the knee joint. Now, we know now that the knee can extend as well as flex, all right? Don't get the two confused. Straightening the knee is extension, bending the knee is flexion. The knee can also, a lot of people don't know that, internally rotate as well as externally rotate. All right, the movement really can't be isolated in training. Mostly it will be extension and flexion, but it can be trained as part of mobility. So joint rotations. I have a separate video on that. I did that a while ago. It should still be on our social media. All right, now uh, we're going to take a look at some basic human movements, which involves knee flexion and extension. All right, and then I'll talk over which muscles help, and then we'll also go over the internal and external rotation of the knee, although it is very limited. Limited. Most external internal rotation of the legs come from the hip, but the knee has a small amount. Okay, of internal and external rotation. Okay, so first, if I would say sit in this chair and I would straighten my knee, that would be extension. If I would bend the knee, that would be flexion. All right, but if I would to stand up out of the chair like this, it is still knee extension, but you also now have extension of the hip and dorsiflexion of the ankle, which we'll touch on later. But the depending on the movement, they are not mutually exclusive. All right. So from a sit, if I were to say sit here and you look at me as a whole, I would still be in hip flexion as well as knee flexion. If I were to stand, I would still be in extension of the knee and the hip. All right. Now, during a walking, we can go a little bit deeper into knee flexion and extension. If I would say to take a step forward and move this knee forward, my knee would be slightly flexed, while the opposite knee would be in extension because that is straight. All right. I'm not going to go over the whole gait cycle. That's for a separate video with the heel strike and the toe off. Completely separate video. All right. So with walking, the leg that's in front will mostly be, unless your gait is somehow altered because of an injury, in flexion, and the back knee would be in extension. Okay. And again, you have a small amount of hip flexion unilaterally, which means only on one side, and hip extension on the opposite side as well, again as knee extension. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, internal and external rotation of the knee mostly gets trained with as part of mobility. Um, People coming from a ballet or a classical dance background are really good at internally and externally the knee joint. It's not something that should be forced, all right, unless your sport or activity requires it. But like I said, it's mostly trained as mobility. The strength work comes from your actual the muscles working in synergy with the other muscles. Just for everyone's information. All right, who's a aspiring sport sports scientists or trainers. Okay, so now let's go back to the muscles. All right, now if I've got my knee in extension, the muscles that will be working will be the teardrop we talked about last time. That is your vastus medialis oblique, or VMO, your vastus intermedius, and your vastus lateralis oblique, or VLO. All right. Your rectus femoris, which is also involved in your hips, will also be working. And like I said, as well as the vastus intermedius. Now, if I would say go into knee flexion, all right, or pulling my knee under, the muscles that will be working will be the semimembranosus in the most medial or inner side, the semitendinosus next to it, and then obviously the biceps femoris or main hamstring group, which has a long head and a short head. Bi meaning to bicep, short and long head of the biceps femoris. Okay, those are the big ones that are involved in knee flexion. Now, there is a whole lot involved in internal rotation of the knee joint. So if I would to, which is quite hard to do if you, like I said, not coming from a contortion or dance background, if I would say go to internal rotation of my knee, I would have the gracilis working, which we discussed, which is also part of the adductor group, which closes the hip or bring the legs together, and the sartorius muscle. Okay, they are both also involved in internal knee rotation. All right, but in the back, which is part of your knee flexors, your semimembranosus and your semitendinosus muscles of the hamstring group are also involved in knee internal rotation. All right, now for knee external rotation, the big group over there will be the biceps femoris, long and short head. A lot of people confuse and think the iliotibial tract has a lot to do with it, but no, that is more hip external rotation. Okay, all right, now, so to recap, main ones you should know: knee extension, your vastus group, as well as your uh, rectus femoris, all right, which consists of, which is called the quadriceps group as a whole, or quads as the gym bro term. All right, so that's knee extension. Knee flexion is your hamstring group: semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and biceps femoris, which has a long and a short head. Bicep, bi meaning two. All right, tri meaning three. Okay. Now, also involved in knee flexion, just for a little bit of extra information, although we haven't covered those muscles much yet, just a little bit, will be your gastrocnemius muscle, which is your which is part of your triceps surae group, all right, or your calf. Those are also involved in knee flexion, FYI. The muscle below it is the soleus. This one, that's normally very, very, very tight in a squat. For some people, when they're doing squats, which should be loosened up. Those are more involved in dorsiflexion, so don't get the two confused. So this big one here, the meaty one, the gastrocnemius, is definitely one of your knee flexors as well. All right. So, and just to go over it again, standing up, you've got your hip and your knee in extension. Sitting down, you got your knee and hip in flexion. All right. Walking, Whichever leg is in front, in this instance at my right, will be knee flexion, all right, and a small amount of hip flexion depending on the length of the stride. And the back leg will be in hip extension as well as knee extension. All right, so we're gonna go through a series of exercises as well. This is exercises already on our social media too, but I'm gonna cover it as well. And those will be for people sitting in chairs. They will mostly involve knee flexion and extension, but I have brought in hip abduction and adduction as well, as those muscles really get weak from prolonged sitting, and people should be aware of them. Okay, now, easy. If you're a trader, you work in finance, or you're just a desk jockey, and you are used to spending 8 hours or more behind the desk, or you're working from home, these are crucial that you do them, quickly run through them a few times a day, okay? Ideally, if you go to gym in the evenings as well, but you don't have time for to just get up and walk around, you need to do this, all right? Just also, they will protect your knees from getting injured when you do go into the gym and you're all of a sudden loading plates on your back, doing axial loaded squats or something like that. All right, so first one will be your knee extension. So all you're going to do is you sit in your office chair, make sure you're sitting nice and straight, okay, gaze is forward, and you just extend your leg, and you want to make sure you contract and focus on that mind-muscle connection, your quad group or your vastus group, your knee extensors, okay? All right, so that's exercise number one, okay? You can do it dynamically, so moving, feeling the quads working, as well as feeling the hamstring working when you do the flexion part. Or you can do it statically, so you can separate the two. You can extend the knee and just hold it isometrically and focus on the mind-muscle connection. I like the static ones, whichever works for you. Okay, if you feel you need pump some blood into your legs, do the dynamic ones. Okay, knee flexion statically, which involves the muscles of the hamstring group, will be pulling your knee under your chair at work here. If you have some of those office chairs with, you know, the wheels and stuff, and you can feel one of the metal legs behind you, you can push your heel against that and really get the hamstring group. Try it. If you have weak hamstrings, they will cramp up. Then you need to go back into leg extension. All right. So flexion and extension isometrically. I like it isometrically. If you make it one exercise, you do it dynamically, but you got to feel the muscles working. Mind-muscle connection, all right? Think about the muscles working. You will tone up the muscle a lot quicker if you've got that connections instead of just moving, okay? Do about 10 on both one side and 10 on the other side if you do it dynamically. If you do it statically, hold it for at least 15 to 30 seconds, and both flexion and extension. Okay, that covers the knee. Like I said, we're not going to do internal external rotation because it involves rotation, and it's mostly done for mobility. And if your sport or activity don't need it, you don't need it right now. All right, you're going to externally internally rotate more from the hip in any case. Okay, even if you in certain sports that require a lot of hip flexibility, and like Olympic lifting, things like that. All right, so we're going to look at getting the adductors activated. Now, I went through the adductor muscles last time, the gracilis, adductor magnus, adductor longus, and brevis, as well as the sartorius. They are all involved in this one. All you're going to do is going to make a fist, and you're going to use the soft part of your VMO, or vastus medialis oblique. Don't use the bone itself. It's going to feel very uncomfortable. All right, unless you're okay with that. And you're just going to squeeze your fists like this while keeping upright. Feel a lot going on here. This exercise can be done dynamically as well, but it will be more like a squeeze and release, or my favorite, static or isometric squeeze and hold, and you'll feel all this muscle light up. Better for mind muscle connection, in my humble opinion. You can try both. Okay, Now we're also going to look at hip abduction. Now, like I mentioned last time when we covered the musculature of the knee, I briefly touched on the gluteus medius, which is one of the first muscles that atrophy as we age, all right, if we don't keep it active. Okay, so these will involve those. This next exercise will involve those, and they are great for your knee health, okay, and should be part of your routine somehow. All right, and all you're going to do is exactly the same. Take your palms, bring it to the outside of the legs, and you're going to try and force your knees open while you're resisting, or again, you can do it for repetitions, okay? So that is your abduction. All right, to finish it off, you can add a few sit to stands. Just be careful in the office, especially if you have a chair that's on wheels. You obviously don't get into any accidents. Otherwise, just do quarter squats until you loosen up and can go straight into deep squats. All right, so you can use those as a finisher. But the important ones, especially if you're busy, are the flexion and extension, the adduction, and the abduction. Okay, abduction meaning knees legs apart. Adduction will be legs together. All right. Okay, so that sums up the basic biomechanics of the knee. I hope that is not too painful. If you struggle, just watch maybe the stream again, and you can always, leave a few questions in the chat box on the right. Please don't forget to subscribe to our social media. We've got really good content coming up, making it really a little bit more user-friendly especially for people that are planning to become clinicians one day, or work in physiotherapy, or go into any holistic career as well. All right. I've got an upcoming webinar as well, so you can subscribe to that. It's a lot more interesting stuff, and there will also be a few things for sale. So that will be all for today. Please have yourself a good day, and let us know if you have any questions. Bye now.